Time has been called. Competitors, in voluntary order, make your 30-second opening statements. Please stand and direct your opening statements to the audience. The timer will indicate when your 30 seconds have elapsed by holding up a red card. You may begin.
We never knew the worth of water till the well went dry, said Thomas Fuller. Growing up in the Nevada desert, I know all too well about the balancing act between communities, agriculture, and industry. Do we keep our lawns green, our mines dewatered, or our farms feeding the great world that we live in?
Thanks, Mark. Some of the things I'd like to touch on is education, partnering. We all need water. History, better usage, better way of applying the water. Knowledge before you purchase either farmland or a residential area. And we highly need to talk about developers and their way of getting some of the waters that we use to use our farms. Thank you.
Travis touched on some really important areas that we need to discuss. This question is tailor-made for the disastrous drought that we're seeing in the state of California right now. And that could have been avoided in at least some extent with better water policy and lawmaking. And so I think that those are some things that we need to discuss tonight to see if we can avoid those same pitfalls in our own states and in our own areas.
My father still farms the fields my great-grandfather homesteaded. His principles have not changed. His methods have. Water was an issue then, as it continues to be today. Which is why common sense water policy needs to continue to be practiced, and marketplace discovery can and will continue to find the balance between vibrant communities and agriculture use.
You have heard the opening statements. The competitors may now proceed with the discussion. Competitors, please direct your discussion towards your fellow panel members.
So, Paige, you mentioned that, your family's been on that land for quite some time, several generations it sounds like, and they've been able to incorporate in some better use practices to better utilize that resource. What would some of those examples be?
Originally, it was all flood irrigation, which is as inconsistent as it sounds. Through the years, we've been able to incorporate wheel line irrigation, hand line irrigation, and now we're predominantly using pivot irrigation, which allows us to better place water at better times of the year for the plants that need it through the different stages of their growth period.
This fight's going on. As I said, I grew up in the Nevada desert, and this fight's going on to a third, fourth, and fifth generation farm to my family, my dad, my brother, and my nephew. And they're in Lovelock, Nevada. They haven't had a drop of irrigation water for the last 2 years. Now, I disagree with you just a little bit on Dusty, where you said this question is tailored for California. I think this question is tailored for the West. Lake Mead's at an all-time low. Nevada is hurting. Magic Valley, for what I understand, is hurting. This is a deal. We were the same way. We were all flood irrigation, and now we're mostly pivots and wheel lights. There's so much technology out there right now with high-intensity agriculture where it takes 70 to 90% less water. Have we ever been introduced or tried any of that on our local farms? We haven't. And we're going to get into this later, but the historical part of this question, how do historics play into that? It's a huge part of this question.
I'd like to
turn your mic on.
Batteries there. I'll try and talk loud. So, here we go. Operator error. So anyway, I still think it comes back to education. I agree with what everybody's been said, and we get that. We are farmers. We are ranchers. We get that. How do we get those guys, the public, to understand what we're dealing with, where we are at? So, you take a developer for example. He goes in and develops an area. There was water rights with that place. The farmer decides to retire. They guarantee you'll have this, this, and this. They build these huge homes with a lot of plants. Is that where our need is? Is that really going to help us in the future? Because they're not becoming less people. But we can educate them, get them to understand. Are they going to like it? No. Probably not. Is it going to be an easy thing? No, it's not. But we got to start somewhere.
Travis, I agree with what you're saying, and I think that that's absolutely key. We've got to educate them on what the benefit is. And Mark, I still disagree with you a little bit, not directly, but this is why. The state of California for years has been one of the most liberal bastions of voting that there has ever been. They have not built a new reservoir, a major reservoir in that state since 1979. And since then, the population has increased by 15 million people, the equivalent of your home state of Nevada, Washington, and Oregon, all moving to California needing those resources. And we all know that California is not a wet state to begin with. So we're seeing those problems come to fruition because of the mismanagement of that system. Now, that being said, they finally were able to get a bond on the ballot to say, hey, can we build some new reservoirs? And 68% of voters approved that bond in the liberal state of California. So they're seeing how severe that problem is, and this is a huge opportunity for us because we can use the public outrage and the demand for water to build more reservoirs, to create more infrastructure, and to overcome some of these environmental hurdles that we face normally.
And I like that because we're not, let's don't live in the past. I agree with that. Let's move to the future. Let's build some reservoirs. Let's do some things. But also, let's not, I'm really going to beat on education a little bit because there are individuals that are in key spots that can do things. Farm Bureau is one of those individuals. They can help. We can push this through. We talk about history. Where's their water coming from? It's coming not from California, Lake Powell, Lake Mead, in those areas. When they go in and build a home, Oprah Winfrey did a thing, and she bases her yard off how many trees she plants. That's what we're dealing with.
Paige,
Is that
Thank you, Dusty. Travis, I love where you're going. Education. So let's take it back to the question. How do we balance ag needs with vibrant communities? So what is a vibrant community? I've actually lived in California several times throughout the period of this last drought, so I have some experience there. To a Californian, just like what you're saying, a vibrant community means green grass, green trees, nature. If you take it back to their perspective, they live in a concrete jungle. So the more trees and grass and flowers they can have, the happier they feel, and they feel that gives them kind of that release from the day-to-day struggle. So education is great, but right now, all those municipalities in California, except for the small municipalities that are run on ground well, they turn on their faucet, water comes. They aren't seeing the connection between the farmers following their fields because they still have water. So I think education is key.
And some of those places, Paige, that's not a natural thing to have grass. I mean, you look at the city of Palm Springs, that's championship golf country. They've actually increased the humidity of that valley from 35% to almost 70%, watering those golf courses because that is a barren desert and it takes that amount of water to keep those green. And so they're asking for something that is not natural in that state.
I think we keep talking about California though. This fight's happening right here underneath our toes. You know, it might not be as drastic right now. California is flushing trillions of gallons out of the delta into the ocean because of a smelt. So I don't feel bad for them right now. I feel bad for the farmers and the communities that it's totally dried up, but I don't feel bad for the state. There is so much to this question that the maintaining communities, they showed that picture, you would probably seen it. They showed that picture where if you watered your things, I think it was in San Diego, if you watered your lawn, it was a $400 fine. What's $400 to a $10 million mansion? Okay, I'll get my lawn paid for $400.
And it's expensive grass that they plant. They don't want to see it die.
Okay, so you take a road that has a pothole. What happens to that road? What happens if somebody loses a life on that road?
They fix it.
They fix it.
Right.
What's the difference here?
California hasn't gone hungry yet.
We could go home today. Right now, we could end this right now.
I know. I understand.
So let's talk about that. So what do? Do we put a gallon meter on that? Or what's your approach?
There are several things that we can do, and we've already kind of covered building reservoirs. And Mark, I'm not just limiting it to California, but I think that that's the example that we're using.
It's the easiest one to find information.
Paige mentioned, you used to flood irrigate, okay? Representative Del Raybould here in the state of Idaho has long championed that we need to be recharging our aquifer because we're not flood irrigating anymore. We're using more efficient methods, but that's having some problems with all these people drilling wells in these communities we're trying to make sure are vibrant. And so we need to look at some situations here and say, well, yeah, all that water is being pumped out of the ground. What are we putting back into that? The communities say, well, I want to turn my faucet on and have water, but they're not necessarily contributing to where that comes back from. One of the things that I've read about that I think would be an excellent usage that way is the difference between black water and gray water and white water. Okay, black water is out of the toilet, it's sewage, okay? And there are several technologies out there to utilize separating black water from, say, gray water, which is from the washing machine, from the sink, from the shower, which is where most of my water goes down. And that water can be used for some of these other things. Now, in my circumstance, I have a well, and it's going right out into my drain field and back into the aquifer, so in effect, we're recycling that. But in some of these municipalities, like you mentioned in California, that's going down to the treatment plant. It's not going right back into that spot.
But the evaporative loss on that.
So perhaps, okay, so that's one avenue, okay. The world's what, 98% water? There's somebody out there smarter than us, or I guarantee it.
Exactly.
Let's start putting some money. Let's put, I don't like the word tax, but let's put a fee. Let's generate some funds. Let's get some of these minds. I'm not here to tell you that I'm the smartest guy and can figure this out, but there's people out there. You get them together, just as we're doing this day, and have a discussion. Let's put our efforts to this. Let's reclaim some of this 98% water.
And I think that's why the California situation is so awesome, because the people down there are finally aware of the situation. All of those liberal voters in the state of California say, we have a problem here and we need to solve this. And they're willing to say, no more environmental impact studies, we just want some water. And I think that can translate to the rest of the United States. Like Mark said, even the western United States where this drought is severe, we can start to spend some of that money, like you're saying, Travis, to try and implement some of this technology, implement some of these situations to better this whole situation for us.
And the effort is already
that.
there.
Yeah.
The policy is already there. It's the big.
Yeah, it's just got to be done.
It's the big elephant in the room. First in right, first in time, and that's why Idaho has been so successful. While not perfect, the Snake River adjudication lawfully sets down who gets water at what time and who gets priority. So yes, California is having issues, and now they are starting to do a similar thing to the adjudication.
And
if we look at our system, it's been working. We just need to continue to be able to let it work and protect the system that is working.
And improve.
But
I gotta keep going.
I think we haven't seen the water drought from the California, from the southern Nevada, from the Arizona. They are going to come to Idaho. They are going to come to Colorado. The part of this question, historic rights, basic social law. When was it set up? 1600s? First in time, first in right.
A lot of guys lost their life over that deal.
Still do. Seriously.
I got a neighbor who was shot.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's a serious deal. But let's talk, Mark. Okay, am I going to go to Nevada and clear some sagebrush and put up a pivot in hopes that when I drill that well that I'm going to get all the water I need?
Right
We
now.
got to think about what we're doing in our own particular business, in our own industry, where we're going and where we're going to grow.
Well, and we've seen that those water rights oftentimes will be more valuable even than the land that they reside on. There are people buying water rights to transfer that to other areas. And so as these communities start expanding and everybody wants to have a well and a green lawn, we're going to have to deal with that. And I think that's why we need to use Farm Bureau as the vehicle to get these discussions going and influence policy at a state and a local as well as a federal level.
But I don't think we've seen, the big push right now, free the snake, free the snake. Open up the dams on the snake so the elusive salmon can come up here. Guys, we're fighting a battle right now that we haven't even seen. Idaho Power wants a piece of it. The Native Americans want a piece of it for the fish. The farmers have to have a piece of it to survive in the world that we live in. One of you guys mentioned sub versus surface irrigation. Yeah, we're not recharging the aqua system. I don't think anybody in this room would argue that. But how are we going to continue to irrigate and grow as many acres? I mean, look at the pivot. There's been a lot of ground that has gone out and cleared sagebrush in southern Idaho and punched a well. And what I'm aware of, is any of you guys Magic Valley people? I think they're dropping their wells quite a few feet every 4 to 5 to 10 years.
In my area, they put a hold on irrigation wells. You can do a stop well, but
Or can you drop it when it dries up, when static goes down?
No, you can't.
We had to recently drop ours on the Rexburg bench, yeah,
Yeah,
because
it's
going down.
a serious deal. But you brought up the point of water rights are worth a lot of money. Heck yeah, they're worth a lot of money. I mean, because the communities either say, we need to go buy a 12,000 acre ranch like Colorado did, or Wyoming, in Laramie, Wyoming, that was on the webinar. Their forefathers went out and saw, yeah, this city's gonna grow and we're gonna need water. Unfortunately, the 90-year-old farmer that's worked his tail off his whole life, that's where he gets his money from, is selling his water rights.
But that takes it back to my bullet point, marketplace discovery will continue to find balance. That 90-year-old farmer, he spent his life on that ground. I think he'd rather sell his water right for a massive amount of money to the city of Laramie than he would see it go into a development and be put into houses. There's a balance there where we have to find. And Farm Bureau is a great navigator of that. They can facilitate that policy that says, you know, what line do we draw in the sand where we say, yeah, it's okay to dry up these farms for the municipality use.
Yeah, we don't want to go farmer versus community. I mean, we don't want to go down that road. I mean, we don't want to discourage them growing a garden either. I mean, there's a fine line there, right? Wouldn't you agree? I mean, we want them to contribute.
They're our consumer, right?
Sure.
So who holds the oldest water rights in your area? Farmers and ranchers.
From Bear Lake, it goes over to Cornish, Utah.
But what? Most of them are like 1918s to 1930s?
Yeah, early 1900s.
Because it was ranchers, farmsteaders and ranchers who moved west, who saw a little piece of oasis or a delta, said, hey, I can make a living here. So farmers have this historic right. I don't know if we're protecting it as well as we need to be or should be.
Well, one of the issues that we run into, and this has been an issue with the government as of late in many areas, is you have a group, a minority, let's say, that have an asset, in this case water, and then you have a majority that looks and says, we want that. How can we legislate or vote people into office that are going to take that away? And so I think that, yeah, we have historical water rights now, but when push comes to shove, if you get situations like in California where people are really struggling, there might be a situation where they say, you know what, we're going to pass laws and enact laws and we're going to put people in office who are going to destroy those water rights and take them away and distribute them. And we've seen that happen with the current administration. They want to take away people's property and distribute it to the masses to get votes. And so I think that's the biggest obstacle that this has besides the environmentalists.
And that's where Idaho Farm Bureau is so well positioned. Recently, the BLM has been trying to buy stock water rights for federal land. Idaho Farm Bureau stepped in and said, no, you're not allowed to buy federal rights because you don't own livestock and you can't put that water to beneficial use, which is the whole point of a water right. We've already started down that process of protecting our historical water rights through the power of Idaho Farm Bureau.
And Paige, you bring up a point, fair market value, fair marketplace. Yeah, that's great in America, and I love that. But fair marketplace isn't when the conservancy nature comes in and buys thousands of wetlands and ties up that water rights. That doesn't do anybody any good. I mean, we're going through that up in New Meadows right now. They're trying to come up and take wetlands and to mitigate other things that they're going to screw up. I think we're being a little soft on this topic. I mean, we need to come punching.
I think that goes back to Dusty, your point with California. 68% of Californians said we're fed up with this environmental regulation on our water.
Yeah,
and they voted to put
that's my whole point.
$7.5 billion into water infrastructure. So it's on a market. The market will decide whether it's from a consumer basis or from a farmer basis. Someone will put their foot down and say, we're done with this. We have to have water. We have to have
And I don't know that you can strictly regulate one state over another, because then you're going to have mass problems. I think it's almost got to be some type of, I don't know if a blanket statement is the right way to put that, but I mean, we're kind of getting, let's go, I kind of like what you're saying. Let's get back to where.
But California is still trying to save an endangered species that's not even savable.
Well, and that's my whole point,
So
Mark, is
they're
you're
not-
absolutely right, but
they're
if you
not
put
first
that,
yet.
if you put that to the voters and say, hey, you know, we've tried to save this smelt, and I've read the study you're talking about, and they have poured 30 years and millions of dollars, and they still are declining. They have not been able to save that fish, and in the meantime, they've destroyed their infrastructure trying to chase that. And so I think if you go to the voters, 68% of whom are approving this bond, and say, look, we've sunk all this money trying to save this fish, and now we have all these problems. Our farmers can't even water, and they're taking that water away from the farmers down there. That's a tremendous opportunity for us. If you've ever stood at the mouth of the Columbia River and seen all the water that's going out into the ocean, if we could save some of that, we could create more water rights. We could have more water to go to these communities. So I like your passion, Mark, because you say, let's come out swinging. Well, here it is. You guys have tried to save the smelt. You haven't been successful. And we're flushing all this water out the Columbia River. And there's huge dams on the Columbia River those salmon have to overcome, and they still are. The Bonneville Dam, the Dalles, they're making it over those fish ladders. We have the technology to protect those fish and to save that water. But the problem is that they've got more money in terms of legislation. So right now, I feel like we need to get behind these people and their anger and use that legislatively to overcome these hurdles.
And
What's the
Mark-
mechanism that's going to get us there? We've talked about reservoir, we've talked about irrigation. That's another topic we need to discuss. What mechanism?
Well, I'd just like to go back to the point I was going to make. I think that's great. I think we need to address that after when we get to it. We can bring the California smelt issue right here at home. We're sending so much water down the snake. Oregon is about to start with it, which means when they make a claim on it, now we have to fulfill those Oregonians' water rights. Farm Bureau does not support minimum flow laws unless there is ample storage to fulfill priority needs first. That is an issue that we need to address here at home through legislation. These minimum flow laws aren't doing any good. The salmon have enough water already. We don't need to be adding that water to our Snake River. We need to be preserving that water.
Well,
Okay,
and
so
there was a case up in my part of the country in Island Park, and the Nature Conservancy, Mark, has been up there and done exactly what you're saying. They're buying up the land and the water rights and closing it off to cattle. But there was an engineer that wanted to run a pipeline down off of the Ashton Hill and generate electricity with that, and there would be no loss in evaporation, and that water would go right back into the Snake River at the bottom of the hill, and they estimated that it would almost power an entire town. And the environmentalists stepped in and said, you can't do that. And so, I mean, we're fighting even worse than the minimum flow laws. They just don't want us to do anything.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, we all
environmentalists
got
are
to
environmentalists.
eat. We all got to eat, okay? So at some point, we got to tie the water right to the agriculture need. I don't care, we can sit here all day and debate about green lawns and aquifers here and this and that, but at the end of the day, people got to eat. And that's where the need for the water is going to be. I mean, yeah, we got to go to the bathroom.
But
I
I'd
get
be
that.
careful with that, Travis.
That's
I'd
what
be
I'm-
careful with that because I'm afraid we would lose support though. Because if you say, you know what, your communities, and you know, it says vibrant communities in the question, if we tell them, hey, we're going to put ag first and the heck with the rest of you, we're not going to have their support to push through the legislation we want. If we show that to be mutually beneficial to both parties, then I think that we've got a chance of doing it.
Absolutely, Dusty. I'm not here to tell you that we're going to get it done in one day. It's going to take time, even years. Look where it's come.
But like I've said on the other questions, we have to sit all the key players down, and I don't care what people say, the recreationals that want to raft and boat and fish, they have more of a say right now than anybody. And we got to get them to the same table.
And whose fault is that? It's our fault.
Well, we're the ones that let them recreate.
We set
because
back.
We built the dams for
That's
irrigation
right. That's
purposes.
right.
Well,
so I
that's
think we can balance both. We look at the state of Nebraska has set a great precedence. They are part of the Ogallala Aquifer, which everyone knows it's drying, except in Nevada. Nevada, a little known fact, they irrigate more ground than any other state in the nation, and Ogallala in Nebraska hasn't fallen a foot because they've enacted recharge laws. Like when
Nevada did or Nebraska?
Nebraska.
so the recharge has been successful, is what you're saying, Paige. And so we have legislatures here in Idaho that are backed by Farm Bureau that have been preaching that And we're not even doing it here in Idaho. So I think, there's opportunity there that we maybe need to push and say, this is important.
It's all about example.
Before we get to that
It's all about example. If we're not practicing what we preach, who else is going to do it?
Have you been to Nebraska?
I have.
And there's a pivot. I mean, it's the most circled up thing you've ever seen in your life.
It's flat.
Yeah, and every pivot that's made that we have on our farms is made right there, Lindsay, Nebraska, or right down the road. So I mean, obviously they're doing something right.
And they're doing it from multiple aspects.
Right.
It's not just farmers recharging. They have, I don't know if you'd call them environmental groups, but they have special interest groups. That's their goal, is to recharge without hampering agriculture's use or maintaining vibrant communities. It's being done. Idaho set the precedence with the adjudication. Nebraska has its uses. We can look to the example of California as what not to do.
Guys, we didn't talk about when these reservoirs were built. The first one I know in the West was Lahontan Lake outside of Fallon in 1918. It was the first Department of the Reclamation job. One of you guys said it from the beginning. It was 79 since California. Name a dam or a reservoir that's been built in Nevada, California, Washington, Oregon since 79. It hasn't happened.
And it needs to.
And that was what, late 80s?
Yeah, we set back too long.
70s.
Late 70s, yeah.
Yeah, we set back too long.
Well, I don't know if we've set back as much as we've been fighting with environmental groups, and they've just got more power. And we can change that. I
They're
think
louder
Farm
than we
Bureau,
are.
we can fix that.
They're louder than we are.
I appreciate
They don't
that.
have more power than us.
I agree.
They
Well,
might have more money behind them, but they don't have more
the
power.
problem is, I don't think that we're as organized as we should be, and that's where Farm Bureau comes in, because if we get people in these meetings, in these planning and zoning meetings, and get on social media, then I think we have a chance.
So how does Farm Bureau, what is our end conclusion? How is Farm Bureau going to?
Well, the public's got to know what the issue is, right? We've said it in all these discussions that we've been in today. Sometimes the public don't even know what's going on.
They
We
haven't
need
gotten
to-
hungry or thirsty yet.
But Californians are starting to, and I think that's the example we look to.
We there?
I thought you raised it.
I thought you raised it.
Dusty, do you have any more to add?
Well, I really believe that if we don't tie this to the communities as well as the farmers, and I think that's what we've got to balance. And so the nice thing about Farm Bureau is we can reach out to those communities. We talked about education a lot. I know, Travis, you brought that up very first off the bat. If we show the communities the benefit to them, that they can have their green lawns, they can have a well at home, all of these things, I
Time
think
has
it'll work.
been called. Please prepare your closing statements. I ask that the audience remain silent for 1 minute to aid the competitors in their preparation. Please put down your pens. In voluntary order, please stand and give your 1 minute closing statement.
Basic social law from hundreds of years ago was great with personal rights. First in time, first in right. Until the accessible resource became inaccessible. Who would have thought hundreds of years ago that the accessible resource that is now such a coveted water? How do we plan for the need, want, and use in the future? Those of us who are the future leaders have an awesome task ahead of us. Guys, thanks for a great final discussion. And ma'am.
I'll take the ma'am as a cue. Defense wins championships. We already have our offense. Our water policy is already in place. So as we continue to use the historical water rights to our advantage, we will continue to be able to protect a scarce resource. I have an app on my phone that tells me what oil, gold, and corn are trading for. Water is a commodity, and it's a scarce commodity. I believe one day that app will show me what water is trading for. But as marketplace discovery has continued to show, we will be able to find balance. Everyone, we have found the balance between oil, we've found the balance between gold, we've found the balance between corn. We will continue to find the balance between water as we all recognize that it is a vital and essential nutrient for human life.
I'm going to go back to my opening statements when I talked about education, partnering, history, better usage, knowledge of where we purchase ground, not only for farm, but for development. And I'm still going to put I firmly believe we kind of touched on it. I think we could talk for days about this subject, and a lot of people have. But I liked what you said, Mark. It is up to us. We're the upcoming generation. It's going to affect our children and our children's children. We got to get a hold of it. We got to run with it. We basically, at the end of the day, we got to work together. It can't be farmers, community. We got to work together, and I want to thank you for a great discussion. Thanks.
My family runs cows in Island Park, Idaho, and I don't know if any of you have been privileged to be there, but it's one of the most beautiful places in the world, I think. And in Island Park, there's a lake called Henry's Lake, and it is considered to be one of the foremost world-class trout fishing destinations. But what a lot of those fishermen don't realize is that lake was created for agricultural water use. And now those people enjoy that resource. And they don't even realize why it was built. They just think it's always been there. And I think that as we use Farm Bureau and we reach out to our communities and show people how much we can benefit them and how we can create these wonderful destinations and reservoirs, we can help them to come together with us to preserve water rights and to be able to irrigate more ground than we do currently.
Thanks. Let's show these competitors our appreciation for a job well done. At this time, I will return control of this competition over to Kyle.
Thank you, Jenny. I'd like to thank our competitors as well as our judges. At this time, I'd like to thank the judges. Our judges were Emily Ward, Jacob Anderson, and James Williams. I'd like to thank them and give them a round of applause for their If the judges will come follow me to the tabulation room, we'll get the scores done, as well as for you competitors and the rest of the audience. You won't find out who till 1 till dinner, which dinner will be at 7 p.m. in the room right across over here.